Welcome to On the Edge with Deneen Dias, and Happy New Year, everybody. I am thrilled to be talking today with one of Botkeeper's most progressive firms, Dark Horse. It's a great way to start off the year as you all are strategizing for 2022, thinking about how you can take advantage of the huge opportunity ahead of you and put some planning in place. I think you're going to learn a lot from the Dark Horse team. Today I'll be talking with Chase and Max. Chase, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, Chase Birky. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Dark Horse CPAs. Brief history, started my career at Deloitte in audit. Quickly realized audit was not for me. Then went to a small firm that was more on the tax and accounting side of things, CAS as it's called these days. And then broke off on my own in 2015 and started what eventually became Dark Horse. And in about 2019, middle of 2019, we substantially pivoted our model, and we've been running with it ever since.
Thank you, Chase. Max, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Max Fritz, Director of Tax and Accounting here at Dark Horse. I actually started my career at that firm. Chase was a previously partner at, was there for a while, and then he parted ways, and I soon there realized that I really enjoyed working with him, so I broke off, and Dark Horse was then founded shortly thereafter. Here we are.
Great. Well, so I met you both last year at Engage, but I had been hearing a lot from especially my leadership team about the Dark Horse model and how you guys were unique and really special, how you're thinking about the profession, how you're thinking about building your practice. And I've also been watching your team just grow. Like you're acquiring top talent faster than most firms in this space. And so I'd love for you to talk about your business model and how it's so different and it's not the traditional type of model. If you can share the secrets to your success, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so we really have what we would consider a democratized CPA firm, where essentially we're providing all the resources, the technology, the infrastructure, the collaboration that allows CPAs to either build a book of business from scratch or bring in an existing book of business and build and scale that book, do it collaboratively in a really supportive team environment. We do a lot on the training front. One thing that accountants don't get much of is sales and business development training. Usually it's go and do the work. Then you get to a point where you become a manager, and then you got to figure out some of these softer skills, and a lot of times it's not formally trained. So really there's it's a really broad offering that we provide to our folks, but really what has been super rewarding is being able to see people come in with a little bit of doubt in terms of what they're going to be able to do in our model, and then with all of the coaching and the resources and the collaboration, just seeing them really just take off and build a really successful practice within Dark Horse, and kind of have a little bit of that personal transformation as well as professional transformation that I got to have for myself when I went out on my own and realized I could do these things. However, when you're out on your own, as some of the listeners on this podcast are probably familiar with, you're handling everything, right? And a lot of times, you're a victim of your own success in terms of being overwhelmed by the work that you've signed, and handling all the other aspects of the business. And so it becomes a very daunting challenge to scale beyond, 200,000-300,000 in revenue without the proper resources, without the proper technology, and support. And it's also lonely, to be honest. I mean, you're the backstop for all research and questions. And, when you've got to figure something out, if you can't get to, an answer that you're happy with, who do you turn to, right? So there's a lot of different points of, value that we're providing to our CPAs, not just technology, not just a collaborative team, but it's really a wholly comprehensive offering and meant to be a life cycle, firm that, our goal is to make sure that we set ourselves up for long-term relationships with our CPAs over hopefully the next couple of decades, and keep them relevant, as the industry, gets overtaken by AI and machine learning and those sorts of things that are dealing, pretty heavily in the compliance area.
Right.
But what it's not doing as much of is the forward-looking strategic advisory. So it's hugely important for us to make sure that our CPAs are leveraging the technology so that they have the time, and brain space to be able to focus on, that really value-add strategic advisory that's going to make them relevant over the next couple of decades.
Yeah, that's I think there's a couple of things I wanted to drill down on what you said, but that's where there's such a need. I think, as I've worked with firms over the last 13, 14 years, they're trying to build a CAS practice. And I would find that innovative person within the firm that really was passionate about building an advisory practice and using technology. But that person kind of felt like they're on their own. And so I would come in and try to support them because it is a newer way of working. It's not, you don't do it the way you do tax and audit. And so they were kind of on an island on their own. And so many people that had this passion and really wanted to work this way, they would quit because they weren't getting supported. And so what I'm hearing you say is you are very talent focused, like you're really focused on giving the people that come to Dark Horse a lot of support on how to build a very profitable long-term model. And so, I think that's why I'm seeing so many people join your team, is you're finding these people that want to do it in a new way and you're supporting them. So can you speak to that, like what you're seeing in the profession right now and why there's so many people leaving and, what you're hearing from those people that are joining Dark Horse?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the common denominator, we've had hundreds of conversations with folks, in our interviewing process, and the common denominator, quite honestly, is a lot of people are just miserable, dealing with existential crises, in terms of what their life is. I think COVID has been, or the pandemic has been, a major point of reflection for a lot of people, and realizing, with a bit of a pause, like, is this going to be my life for the next 5, 10, 15 years? And it's sped up a lot of things. And I think one of the things it's also sped up is people realizing I can't be stuck in a career that, doesn't fulfill me. So a lot of what we're seeing, it's a bit of a dual-sided issue in terms of the talent shortage. You've got an older generation that's retiring or close to retiring. You've got a pipeline that is, substantially diminished for a number of reasons. So those experienced hires are, as all firms know, at a major premium, and so ultimately what we found, is that, like you're saying, a lot of firms are adverse to adopting technology and adverse to change in a lot of ways, whether that is just, not wanting to deal with something new and deal with those headaches, or maybe it's a power thing that, the power structure of the firm doesn't, allow for. But for us, it's really all about aligning our major stakeholders. And that's where we're really different than a lot of firms where, a traditional firm is going to look at the technology and look at the ROI, and if they can't immediately see how that pencils out, they're going to say, well, we're not going to do this, at least now. Our staff, needs to grind. I did that, when I was their age, and, that's just what you do, right? And so from the staff perspective, you end up, working a ton of hours, dealing with frustrating systems and processes, not seeing any additional compensation, for that gluttony of hours that they're putting in. So, ultimately people are getting burnt out.
Yeah.
I don't think that's any secret. They're getting burnt out. They're not fulfilled by the work. It's not so much the hours, it's the purpose or lack thereof that people are really struggling with. And I think, when you talk about an existential crisis, I think that's what's going on with a lot of folks, we're hearing it.
Yeah, you're right. Because I have talked to folks through the years that were like, I want to quit and start my own thing. I can do this. The firm doesn't want to do this. I can do this, right? I'm going to quit and do my own thing. And they're afraid to quit, go off on their own and do their own thing because, maybe they're really good at the technology and implementing the technology, but they're like, I need marketing. I need leads. They can't wear all the hats, or maybe they're great advising clients, but they need somebody to help with technology implementation. And so they're afraid to go off on their own, even though they know if they did it, they could do it their way. And so I think they're finding you, or you're finding them. But, the biggest thing that I think on top of why the talent is coming to you, why they're leaving and why they're coming to Dark Horse. And something else you've been talking a lot, and obviously where Botkeeper fits, is the technology. And so we had major growth here at Botkeeper last year, and we had a lot of firms start using Botkeeper last year. But to what you just said, Chase, is they have a really tough time using the technology. They know that Botkeeper is going to free them up, but they're doing the grind, and everybody is so busy just trying to get the books closed and gathering the data and just giving the report. They don't have time to implement the new processes and the new technology. The person that's implementing technology at the firm, it's their side job, and they still have their day job that they're drowning in. And so there's no time to really implement the things that are going to save you time so you can move into that advisory model. So, please share with me what you're seeing, I know, and how you're handling that.
Yeah, and I think this is an issue both at the sole practitioner level and the firm level, and it's really what I would call the accountant's survival trap. You've got all of these hard pressing deadlines, that you have to prioritize over everything else, right? And so, what that leaves is, okay, we're going to do these things after April 15th, right? Or after October 15th. If it's a tax-oriented practice. And, at that point, you need a vacation. You're tired, right? And then you come back and then you're dealing with all the things that, came up, in your absence. And, so it just comes down to bandwidth, right? And when you don't have dedicated people to support those areas, and they're trying to put out the fires that just come up in the profession, especially with all the changing legislation and just, the environment we find ourselves in, which really has been the case for 4 years since the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. It doesn't leave much time for strategic thinking, for, building a technology stack that actually supports you. And even if you have that bandwidth, you've got to have the horsepower in terms of, a technical brain, and someone who can understand how to architect a tech stack, how to automate, how to connect it, whether it be a Zapier, or RPA or whatever it is. There's, a ton of work, that can be done in that area. And there's really no limit to what you can do. There's larger firms like Aprio, for example, that have Aprio Cloud, and they've got 150 people working on that, right? But they're a major outlier. A lot of firms have no dedicated staff and just, people like you're saying that are trying to handle both functions. And at the end of the day, it's, where are the priorities, where are the incentives, and if the change agent for the technology in the firm, is constantly being deprioritized by the client work, they're going to get frustrated, and, these things are either going to be half-baked when they're rolled out or just scrapped.
Right. Another thing to add there too, real quick, is just it's never static. It's always changing. You have to stay on it. Every few months you have to test some, you have to be evolving constantly. So it requires, practitioners to be intentional to find this time, which is tough to do. It's just, as we've touched on here, you have to carve out that time to be intentional. Otherwise, it's not something you can just address, after tax season, you're good for, the next 5 years. It's something you constantly have to be thinking about and addressing. Right.
Well, and Max, why don't you share what your role is at Dark Horse? Because you do kind of manage a lot of this, the team, the technology. Why don't you share your role?
Yeah. So in our model, we bring in what's called accelerators. So these are people without really books of business. They're starting from scratch. And, with our marketing funnel that we have, they're building up their books of business. And throughout that process, without go on a long spiel. I kind of act as mom here, helping them, get coached up, making sure that they're, getting comfortable with our tech stack. They're thinking about stuff the right way. They're building their book with the right types of clientele. Getting them accustomed to our systems and processes that we recommend, helping them with the sales process. And then in addition to that, just, overall firm operations, a lot of collaboration with Chase and whatnot on the, what can we roll out here? Does it make sense to, have an RPA built out to have these two pieces of software talk to each other? Which again, that's enough. That's a full-time job right there that keeps, everybody busy.
Yeah, but that role is, go ahead, Chase. I mean, having someone like Max on your team is really crucial to this model. What were you going to say, Chase?
Yeah, as you say, it's important to know that our leadership team really, the customer for us is the CPA, so we're here to support them so that they can support clients, so I myself do next to no client service. Max does, a little bit, to be, have his pulse on, what's going on out there and making sure that we're not rolling things out from the ivory tower that don't really make sense in practice. But the number one priority is, developing our accelerators, our principals, and helping them succeed.
Yeah, that's a big shift. I mean, the traditional firm, it's always been client focused. What the client needs, do it the way the client wants, focus on the billable hours. It's all about the client experience. And I know it's very hard to shift and to be talent focused, but talent has always been the number one issue for firms over the last couple of years. Last year, it was just really worse. I think that, and to Chase, you mentioned the pandemic, I think caused people to pause and think about their life and think about the work that they were doing. And they're like, why am I in this rat race? I'm not happy. And so firms now are really putting a lot of thought into their talent, and they're starting to actually, get rid of some clients to support their talent. But it's not natural for firms to be talent first and not client first. And so I love hearing you say that, what you're building here is something, it's a really unique model, and kudos to you for your successes. I did want to shift a little bit and talk more about, so how long have you been using Botkeeper? I think you said it hasn't been quite a year. Right?
Right. Been about 9 months at this point.
Okay. And I'd love to just hear from you, like where that fits, because you talked a lot about RPA and you talked about, putting more processes in place. And a lot of the large firms, they have something like Aprio, right? They're starting to build out that technology. There's also a new competitor in town in these venture-backed technology companies that will be creating their own technology. And so, I think, and Max, you said that things are changing constantly. You have to have a pulse on all the new technologies out there. And so I'd love for you to share sort of, how you started using us, why you started using us, and how that process has changed for you and the service delivering.
Definitely. I think we're very aligned, because I know that Botkeeper originally was going straight to the business clients themselves, and they made a pivot to support CPA firms, and there's a number of firms out there that are kind of engineering firms with accountants sort of thing, like your pilots of the world, and they lead with that technology, offering to their business clients. A lot of startups is kind of where they focus. For us, it's, as I was saying before, because the CPA is our customer, our technology is for them. Not to say that we don't also have stuff on the consumer facing side or the client facing side to make their journey at Dark Horse easier, but our first and primary priority is to support our CPAs. So we want to give them all of the technology that we possibly can, all of the resources, whether that's fractional staffing or full-time staffing, systems and processes, whatever it is, so that they can be as efficient as possible, so they don't have to spend a bunch of time, trying to get their engagement letters, figured out manually, fixed in Word and then sent out via DocuSign, and all that headache that creates a huge bottleneck during tax season. We're all about putting that technology at their fingertips and making sure they really know how to utilize it and leverage it, so that they can scale the book, be available for those strategic conversations and not, just have a brain drain from doing all the data entry and administrative work that's out there. So it's hugely important. And where Botkeeper is a huge partner for us, is that we ultimately don't want our CPAs doing debits and credits and reconciling books. Not to say that there's not value there, there certainly is, but when it comes to where they're providing the most value, that's just not it, right? So to the extent, and this is pervasive across the board, but specifically as it relates to CAS, for them to be able to, get a set of books that, is coded and reconciled, and, where there might be, just some information that needs to be passed back and forth, in terms of maybe a nuance of this client and why something is coded one way versus another, that gets retained in the system. And it's not, something month after month you're constantly, trying to remind a preparer, that they're getting incorrect. We used to outsource to India, and, aside from the language barrier and kind of the time schedule that they worked, a huge challenge was, you had to constantly deliver feedback, and that feedback oftentimes didn't result in the change needed. And when that doesn't happen, people get discouraged and say, screw it, I'm just going to do this myself, because I'm spending too much time trying to guide, this outsourcing partner. So with Botkeeper, it's, you tell them it's programmed into the machine and it just happens, right? So really for us, whether it's Botkeeper or any other, piece of technology we put in place, it really needs to move the needle forward, and it needs to free their, time up so that they can, be focused on the future. And ultimately, the folks that are spending a lot of time on that stuff that could be done by technology or could, largely be done by technology, if not all the way, you just kind of sending yourself the wrong direction in terms of relevancy for the next couple of decades, because accountants 10 years from now, 20 years from now are going to look a lot different than they currently do. So you've got to be orienting yourself towards what that is going to be, because otherwise, that compliance work and the stuff that you can bill for now is, there's going to be fee compression. There's going to be, maybe just not even able to charge for it at a certain point, if the technology is really taking it from start to finish. But what we believe, is that as good as AI and machine learning is probably in our career, it's not going to be able to, have the level of strategic planning, conversation and consulting that we can provide as humans, knowing, a host of variables, and having, a dynamic conversation, so that's just really where we're orienting. And we look at technology as a tool to help us do that.
Yeah. And so, I agree with what you just said. I think just to highlight a couple of things. I mean, the number one reason firms tell us they're using Botkeeper, the number one reason is they want to move into advisory. And so they're really stuck doing the work. They can't get the work done to then transition into being more advisory. And so, yes, we hear a lot of firms, and Chase, you and I were in Nashville last month at the CPA.com's digital conference. I heard outsourcing and offshoring a lot because, that kind of goes with even the capacity, right? Is they're just drowning. There's more work to get done and people aren't able to get the books closed on time. And so how I believe, do you automate first? Automate as much as you can. So a lot of the firms have made the shift to the cloud, but they're trying to figure out their strategy of how to, it's like grow, but there's a difference with growing and scaling to grow, right? And so, I think what you just described is, you mentioned that you started offshoring, and there's challenges that come with that, right? And so I think firms have a real opportunity. I don't want to say challenge. They have a real opportunity this year to really pause and think about, what do I want to start doing now? Because who do I want to be in 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years? And I have to start taking advantage of the technology now in my strategy, because automation is going to change all of this. Clients are looking for this help. So if the firms can learn it, right, help their clients with it, be a part of this change instead of fighting it, right? Everybody wins. So, you know, that is something I wanted to talk with you more about, though, is how you think about outsourcing and offshoring, because you mentioned, well, this is a hot topic. So I just said you started down that path already, and you shift to using Botkeeper. Are you still offshoring and using Botkeeper? Are you doing both?
Yeah, so we have a team actually in the Philippines that we love and provide a ton of value to us. So it's just really important to be intentional about are you bringing a person in to do this? Are you bringing in technology to do this, or a hybrid of both?
Right.
In the same way you can't throw a person at a problem and just expect a good result. You can't throw a piece of technology that was sold to you by sales rep and just presume that that's going to do the same thing, right? So you got to be really intentional about and realistic about what technology really can do, and then build from there in terms of where you need the human to guide the technology or take it to completion, depending on what the task is. So especially on the sole practitioner side, you end up seeing a lot of just ad hoc, okay, I've got a number of apps that were sold to me that seem to accomplish what I need to have done, but they don't talk to each other. They don't really address the totality of kind of what needs to be done. So a lot of building technology is planning, to be honest, because you really have to know your systems and processes, and ideally what you want them to be, to build the tech stack around that, and understand where you need some human involvement, where you might build some automations over time, because they don't happen overnight. Even some of the low code stuff, there's a huge learning curve. And if you're getting into full RPA, there's build time, there's lead time to make that work, there's quality assurance to make sure that the bot's actually doing what it needs to do and it doesn't break, and when it does, you fix it. And once again, it's all these things that aren't impossible to accomplish. It's just impossible to accomplish if it's just you, or if you're at a firm where you've got 80 or 90% of your time that needs to go to client service. Trying to make all that happen, on top of it all, is a very tall order.
It's a challenge, and I'm really glad you found Botkeeper, because listening to you, what you're trying to do with your firm and with your teams is really, there's so much synergy in what our vision is of how we can help firms. And so, we have a platform that firms can use and add their clients to the platform. Yes, you get some AI in that, but that's not all we are as an AI company. You get our talent as well. And within that platform, we also help you, because we know there's so many apps. How do you log into QBO? How do you log into Bill.com? How do you log into ADP? So we have password manager, task manager. So, Chase, what you're describing, what you're trying to do, Botkeeper is also trying to help firms do with the whole platform, because our belief is it's so aligned, is that, robots cannot replace the human. There's so many human elements that the firm, and you're going to be training your humans on how to be more advisory, right? To get out of that day-to-day least complex stuff and to offer more of the complex stuff. That's what clients will value. That's what clients will pay for, right? And that's what clients are asking for. And so you're really, and using all of this to make that shift. So we've got a minute left. I'm not sure if there's any questions, if we can open it up, because I know we had a lot of people register for this today. So is there any questions, Stella?
Currently, we don't have any questions, but if anybody wants to put it into the question box, feel free, or raise your hand and we'll unmute you as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Stella.
And while we're waiting on that, one thing that came to mind, is it's a huge point of value for a firm like ours to have that US based CPA that we, have a relationship with that, is managing that technology and managing the work product that comes out, because it just goes a long way, and things not being lost in translation. Someone
Yeah.
who understands the nuance, because they've done it themselves, previously to get that CPA designation. So, from our standpoint, the fact that Botkeeper has a technology is great, but what makes it kind of that next level is that we've got that person to correspond with to make sure that we're constantly tweaking the machine learning so it continues to understand what we're trying to accomplish, and that's hugely valuable.
It's huge.
So
Thank you for saying that.
We do have a question. Do you tell clients their work is done offshore?
It's a great question. How do you handle that, Chase?
Yeah, I mean, transparency is everything, right? So, it's baked into our engagement letters, and, it doesn't happen for every client. There's a number of principals within the firm that, don't outsource. They have someone domestically, and a lot of times we're not, having sensitive information go over there. It's a lot of administrative work and that sort of thing. But where there is sensitive information, all the disclosures and conversations happen. But what's important for the client to understand is that while, some of that work may originate overseas, it's all being reviewed, by that principal, if not, someone that's underneath the principal as well as the principal. So, we're not just relying on them to do something and just throwing it out the door without a review process. But, we haven't really encountered much resistance at all to that. I think it's just become a lot more expected, and it's also a way we can say, look, this allows me to focus once again on that strategic advisory and charge you a price that is really competitive and less than the big guys out there, and people are receptive to that.
Yeah, and I think for Botkeeper, we have a team in Philippines as well that are trained to work with the bot. So you get our tech and talent. That's part of the talent is our humans are trained to work with the machines. They are in the Philippines, but the data doesn't leave the States. And so they're VPing into the data in America. And so, how firms disclose that if they're using technology like Botkeeper, it's kind of like, are you telling them, how Bill.com does some offshoring, QBO does some in talent offshore. So it's how are you using your technology? We do have to go. Before we go though, Chase, can you let folks know how to contact you if they're interested in talking with you more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you're interested in, merging your practice in or becoming an accelerator, our VP of Principal Development, Justin Kern, is probably your best contact. So he's just Justin at darkhorse.cpa. Also, you can go to the website. There's contact forms on our Join the Team area of the website. So darkhorse.cpa, either way.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it, Deneen.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.